The wind brushed past Emma's face as she stood outside the cafe, clutching her phone tightly in one hand. Her eyes darted to the small clock on the screen. 6:45 p.m. 15 minutes early. Her stomach churned. What if this was a mistake? What if he didn't show up? Her breath caught as she noticed her reflection in the cafe's glass door. She straightened her posture and adjusted her coat. "It's just coffee," she whispered under her breath, trying to quiet the storm in her chest. But deep down, she knew this wasn't about coffee. It was about being seen, being valued. For a moment, she considered turning around and leaving, but the faint flicker of hope in her heart pushed her forward. She reached for the handle, hesitated, then stepped inside. Emma was no stranger to hardship. Growing up in a modest neighborhood, her days were filled with long shifts at the local diner, late-night study sessions, and an unshakable determination to rise above her circumstances. Her life had been a series of sacrifices, passing on new clothes so her younger brother could have school supplies, working double shifts so her mother didn't have to. Yet, through it all, Emma dreamed of something more, a career, a life where she could stand on her own, and perhaps someone to share it with. This blind date wasn't just about romance. It was a moment of escape from the relentless grind of her life, a chance to feel special, even if only for an evening. As Emma stepped into the warm, aromatic cafe, she was met with the rich scent of coffee and faint chatter from nearby tables. Her nervousness seemed to grow louder with every step. The room felt alive with subtle glances and quiet whispers. Emma could feel them, as though each gaze carried its own question. What is she doing here? Does she belong? Her hands instinctively brushed the fabric of her thrifted dress, and she resisted the urge to look down at her shoes. She scanned the room, searching for someone who matched the vague description she'd been given. A blue shirt, brown hair, an easy smile, but every face seemed unfamiliar. Emma found herself holding her breath as she approached a small table by the window. The cafe light reflected off the glass, casting gentle shadows on her face. She adjusted her dress again, a subconscious attempt to feel more confident. "It's just a date," she reminded herself silently. But the fragile sense of calm she had built on the walk here felt ready to shatter. She pulled out her chair carefully, smoothing the hem of her dress as she sat. A soft, uncertain smile formed on Emma's lips as she waited, her hands resting awkwardly on the table. She wanted to appear relaxed, but the truth was, her heart was racing. Every movement in the cafe caught her attention, the barista calling out an order, the scrape of a chair against the wooden floor, the soft hum of conversation. The noise seemed to amplify her unease. In the quiet moments between glances at the door, she wondered, will this be the connection I've been looking for, or just another reminder of how alone I feel? Emma's journey wasn't defined by grand gestures or dramatic victories. It was the quiet perseverance of someone who had carried more than her fair share of burdens, yet continued to hope for something better. Her presence in this cafe was a testament to her courage. Despite the challenges, despite the doubts, she had chosen to believe in the possibility of something good. As the minutes passed, Emma found herself reflecting on the path that had brought her here. This moment, ordinary in so many ways, felt like a small rebellion against the odds she faced. Her story wasn't unique, yet it carried a universal truth, the hope for connection, for belonging, and for a chance to rewrite the narrative of her life. Emma didn't know what the night would bring, but sitting there in a room filled with strangers, she allowed herself a quiet moment of faith. Her life had been a series of struggles, but it had also been filled with resilience. And as she waited, the cafe became more than a backdrop. It was a symbol of possibility, a stage set for something unexpected, something that might change everything. For Emma, tonight was more than a date. It was a step toward a future she had only dared to imagine. The soft chime of the cafe's bell rang out as Emma stepped inside, her eyes darting across the room. She clutched her phone in one hand, glancing nervously at the description her date had sent. Blue shirt, brown hair, seated near the window. Her gaze landed on a man sitting alone by the window, his dark brown hair catching the soft glow of the setting sun. He wore a crisp blue shirt, his posture relaxed yet attentive. Emma hesitated. Was this him? Her heart pounded in her chest. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder, straightened her dress, and took a tentative step forward. "Hi, are you Lime?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the soft hum of the cafe. The man looked up, his eyes meeting hers. There was a flicker of confusion before he smiled, a warm, inviting smile that put her slightly at ease. "Yes, I am," he said, motioning to the seat across from him. Emma exhaled, relieved. She hadn't made a fool of herself. At least, not yet. Daniel watched as the young woman slid into the seat across from him, her hands nervously smoothing the hem of her dress. He had no idea who Liam was, but he felt a sudden, inexplicable pull to play along. "I hope I'm not too early," Emma said, offering a timid smile. "I'm not usually good with these things." "Not at all," Daniel replied, his voice steady and calm. "It's nice to meet you." He wasn't sure why he'd said yes to her question, why he was letting this charade unfold. Maybe it was the way her eyes carried a quiet determination, or the way her nervousness seemed to soften the edges of the moment. Their conversation began as most do, with polite questions and surface-level answers. Emma talked about her love for reading and how she hoped to finish her studies soon. Daniel listened, asking just enough to keep her talking. But as the minutes passed, something shifted. Emma spoke of her family, her younger brother's dreams of becoming a doctor, her mother's late-night sewing to make ends meet. Her words carried the weight of someone who had known struggle, but had never let it extinguish her hope. Daniel found himself leaning forward, his curiosity growing. "It sounds like you carry a lot on your shoulders," he said, his voice softer now. Emma hesitated before nodding. "Sometimes I just wish, I don't know, that someone could see me, really see me." Daniel's chest tightened. He wasn't sure what to say. All he knew was that he didn't want her to stop talking. As their conversation deepened, Daniel noticed things he hadn't at first. The way Emma's eyes lit up when she spoke of her dreams. The way her hands danced lightly on the edge of the table when she got lost in thought. He had met countless people in his life, many of them more polished, more assured. But there was something about Emma's raw honesty that drew him in. And for Emma, the unease she had felt walking into the cafe began to dissolve. For the first time in what felt like ages, she felt understood, as though her words carried weight beyond polite exchanges. The moment of connection was shattered when Emma's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, her expression shifting from calm to confusion. "Hey, sorry I couldn't make it tonight. Something came up. Can we reschedule?" Emma froze. Her stomach dropped as the realization hit her. She looked at Daniel, her eyes wide. "You're not lying," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel's face remained calm, but there was a flicker of regret in his eyes. "No," he admitted quietly. Emma stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Why didn't you say something? Why did you?" Her words trailed off, caught somewhere between anger and disbelief. Outside the cafe, Emma paced back and forth, her thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and embarrassment. How had she not noticed, and why hadn't he said anything? Her feelings warred within her. There was anger at herself for being so naive, frustration at Daniel for his silence, and a strange sadness she couldn't quite place. She glanced back at the cafe through the glass, seeing him still seated at the table, his hands folded, his eyes distant. What had he been thinking? As she walked away, the cool evening air brushing against her skin, Emma couldn't shake the image of Daniel's expression as she left, calm, almost pained. Her mind replayed their conversation, the way he had listened so intently, the way his words had seemed to carry an understanding she hadn't felt in years. Who was he? Why had he stayed silent? Emma couldn't decide if this was fate's cruel trick or a moment meant to teach her something she didn't yet understand. Whatever the case, she knew this encounter would linger with her, a question without an easy answer. The streets were dimly lit as Emma walked home after another long day. The faint glow of streetlights flickered through the cracks in her tired smile. Her day had started at 6 a.m., running errands before her morning shift at the diner. By noon, she was in class, trying to keep up with assignments. Evenings were spent back at work, serving plates with a practiced politeness that masked her exhaustion. Her brother's textbooks were heavy in her bag, a reminder of why she pushed herself so hard. It wasn't just about her future. It was about his too. She had dreams of becoming a teacher, of lifting her family out of the constant cycle of struggle. But tonight, her heart felt particularly heavy, as though the weight of her unseen sacrifices pressed down harder than usual. Emma often dreamed of having someone to share the load with, someone who could see beyond her callous hands and long hours. The thought of companionship was a quiet longing she rarely acknowledged, tucked away beneath layers of responsibility. Her friends often encouraged her to go out more to meet people, but she laughed it off, saying she didn't have the time. The truth was, Emma feared letting someone in only to be misunderstood or dismissed. Sitting at the cafe earlier that evening had felt different. For a moment, it was as if the world had paused, offering her a chance to step out of the chaos and into something softer. She wanted to believe that this could be more than just another ordinary night. Daniel's gaze lingered on Emma as she spoke, her words flowing with a raw honesty he rarely encountered. He listened intently, not out of politeness, but because he wanted to understand her. "I work at the diner just down the street," Emma had said, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills, and I'm studying too. Education's important to me." Daniel's nod was subtle, his silence deliberate. He could sense that Emma wasn't looking for empty praise or pity. She simply wanted to be heard. Her presence grounded him in a way he couldn't quite explain. In her, he saw resilience and hope, qualities he often struggled to find in himself. But even as Emma shared her story, Daniel's thoughts remained guarded. There was a mystery to him that Emma couldn't quite put her finger on. His questions were thoughtful, his smile genuine, yet there was an air of distance in his demeanor, as though he was hiding something. "Enough about me," Emma said, leaning forward slightly. "What about you? What do you do?" Daniel hesitated, his smile faltering for just a moment. "I travel a lot. Work keeps me busy," he replied vaguely. His tone was calm, but his words revealed little. Emma felt a flicker of curiosity. He seemed open yet unreachable, like a book with missing pages. Later that night, as Emma replayed their conversation in her mind, her emotions were conflicted. She remembered how Daniel had made her laugh, how his calmness had steadied her nerves. Yet, the memory of this quiet deception still lingered. Why hadn't he told her the truth from the beginning? Why had he pretended to be someone else? Despite her frustration, Emma couldn't deny the warmth she had felt in his presence. It wasn't often that she connected with someone so effortlessly, even under such strange circumstances. As she sat on her bed, scrolling through her phone, a new message popped up. "Hey, sorry I couldn't make it tonight. Something came up. Can we reschedule?" Emma stared at the screen, her heart sinking. The apology from her actual blind date only deepened her confusion. What was the purpose of this evening? And why did it feel like a turning point, even though nothing had gone as planned? Daniel sat in his apartment, the lights dim and the city's noise muffled by the thick glass of his windows. He couldn't stop thinking about Emma, the way her voice softened when she spoke of her family, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her dreams. He wanted to tell her the truth, but something had held him back. Perhaps it was the fear of her seeing him differently, of the weight his name carried in certain circles overshadowing the person he truly was. Emma's authenticity had stirred something in him, peeling back layers of detachment he had built over the years. For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt seen in her presence, not as a name, but as a person. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his thoughts drifting to the privileges he often took for granted. He had grown up in a world far removed from Emma's, a world where opportunities were plentiful and struggles felt distant. Yet, despite their differences, there was something about Emma's story that resonated deeply with him. Her strength, her determination. It reminded him of the things he admired most but rarely voiced. Daniel's admiration for Emma grew, not because of her hardships, but because of the way she carried them with quiet grace. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, and he couldn't shake the feeling that their paths had crossed for a reason. By the time Emma finally drifted to sleep, the events of the evening still swirled in her mind. She couldn't help but wonder what the future held for them. Two strangers brought together by a mix-up that felt oddly intentional. Though the night had left her with more questions than answers, one thing was clear. Something had shifted, not just in the course of her evening, but in the course of her life. And as Daniel stared out at the city lights, he too felt a sense of change, as though meeting Emma had opened the door he didn't even know existed. The envelope sat on Emma's desk, its smooth surface reflecting the dim light of her tiny apartment. She turned it over in her hands, studying the elegant handwriting. Her name stood out boldly on the front, written with care, as though it carried some weight she couldn't yet understand. Inside was an invitation to a charity gala. Emma's brow furrowed as she read it. No sender, no explanation, just a date, time, and location. She glanced at her phone, half expecting a follow-up message that never came. Who could have sent this? And why her? She placed the card down and stared at it for a long moment. Part of her wanted to toss it aside, dismissing it as a mistake. But something about the invitation tugged at her curiosity, a quiet voice urging her to find out what awaited her. Days later, Emma stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the borrowed dress her friend had insisted she wear. She had hesitated for hours before deciding to attend, her mind playing through endless scenarios. What if this is a mistake? She whispered to her reflection. It's not, her friend had said earlier, fastening the zipper on the dress. Sometimes opportunities don't make sense until you take them. Now staring at her reflection, Emma tried to silence the doubts swirling in her head. This wasn't just about the gala. It was about daring to step into a world that felt far from her own, a chance to see if her dreams could stretch beyond her small apartment and daily grind. The ballroom shimmered like a scene from a movie. Chandeliers hung like glowing constellations, and laughter floated through the air, blending with the soft notes of a piano. Emma hesitated at the entrance, her breath catching as she took in the grandeur around her. Her steps felt small on the marble floor, the sound of her heels swallowed by the hum of conversation. She clutched her bag tightly, her confidence wavering with every step. Emma reminded herself why she was there, to network, to meet people who could help her grow. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. She scanned the room, searching for a familiar face, someone who might make her feel grounded, but instead, her eyes locked on him. Daniel stood near the stage, his presence commanding the room. He wasn't just another guest, he was the host. Emma froze, her heart pounding in her chest. It could be him. Yet there he was, speaking with grace and ease, his every gesture filled with a quiet authority she hadn't seen before. Her mind raced as she pieced it together. Daniel wasn't just a man at the wrong table. He was a philanthropist, a figure known for supporting causes she deeply cared about. Her hands trembled as she gripped her bag. She didn't know whether to be furious, embarrassed, or impressed. All she knew was that she needed answers. After the speeches ended, Emma found herself standing face to face with Daniel in a quiet corner of the room. His expression shifted as he saw her, surprise, guilt, and something softer beneath it. "You lied to me," Emma said, her voice steady but laced with hurt. Daniel's eyes dropped to the floor. "I didn't mean to," he said softly. "I didn't know how to tell you." "You didn't know how to tell me what? That you were, what, rich, important?" Her words spilled out, a mix of anger and confusion. "I didn't want you to see me as those things," Daniel replied. "I wanted you to see me." Daniel took a deep breath, his voice low but steady. "When I saw you at that table, I could have told you the truth. But I didn't. Not because I wanted to deceive you, but because I didn't want my name, my status, to get in the way of something real." Emma stared at him, her emotions tangled. She wanted to stay angry, but his words carried a sincerity she couldn't ignore. "I listened to you talk about your life, your family," Daniel continued. "And for the first time in a long while, I felt human. Not a title, not a name, just someone who could connect." Emma's heart softened as she listened, though her mind still swirled with questions. Could she trust his words? Was this moment genuine, or was she just another part of his world? She searched his face, looking for the cracks in his polished demeanor. What she found surprised her. Behind the calm exterior was someone who seemed as vulnerable as she felt. For the first time, Emma saw Daniel not as a stranger, not as a deceiver, but as someone trying to reconcile the life he lived with the person he wanted to be. Their conversation stretched into the night, moving from accusations to understanding. By the end, Emma felt a strange sense of clarity. Daniel's choices had hurt her, but his honesty now spoke volumes. "I don't know what to do with this," she admitted, her voice softer now. "Neither do I," Daniel replied. "But I know I don't want to lose whatever this is." Emma looked at him, a small smile breaking through the storm of her emotions. Perhaps this wasn't about answers. Perhaps it was about letting the story unfold. As Emma left the gala, the city lights reflecting in her eyes, she felt a shift within her. The night had been nothing like she expected, yet it had opened the door to something she hadn't dared to imagine. Daniel stood at the entrance, watching her go. For the first time in years, he felt like he was standing on the edge of something meaningful. Their lives, so different yet inexplicably connected, had begun to intertwine. Neither of them knew what the future held, but one thing was certain: this was only the beginning. Emma sat by her small desk, a quiet smile playing on her lips as she stared out the window. The city lights twinkled like distant stars, their glow filling the room with a soft warmth. In her hand was the invitation from the gala, now slightly worn from being folded and unfolded countless times. That evening had been a turning point. What began as an unexpected blind date had opened doors she never imagined. Emma had always believed her life was meant for quiet perseverance, but that single serendipitous encounter reignited something she thought she'd lost: her determination to dream boldly. The memory of Daniel's words lingered in her mind, echoing with a truth she couldn't deny. "You are stronger than you realize, Emma. Don't let fear hold you back." For the first time in years, Emma felt a shift within her. The doubts that once clouded her path were giving way to something brighter. She no longer saw her struggles as limitations, but as stepping stones. That night, as she closed her journal after writing her goals, she felt an unshakable resolve. It wasn't just Daniel's faith in her that inspired her. It was the realization that she was capable of believing in herself. Emma's journey had taught her something profound. What lay beneath the surface often mattered more than what met the eye. She reflected on her initial impression of Daniel, the stranger who had silently carried the weight of his identity to connect with her as an equal. Through their time together, Emma came to understand the beauty of sincerity and the strength it took to let others see your true self. It wasn't wealth or status that built meaningful connections. It was kindness, shared values, and a willingness to see the world through someone else's eyes. In Daniel's penthouse office, the noise of the bustling city below felt miles away. He leaned against the large window, holding a photograph Emma had gifted him. A snapshot of her and her brother, their smiles bright with the promise of a better future. Daniel had met countless people in his life, but Emma's courage stood apart. Her resilience in the face of hardship reminded him of the values he'd lost touch with in the whirlwind of his success. Emma's story was a quiet but powerful reminder of what truly mattered, not achievements or accolades, but the strength to endure, to care, and to hope. Their connection didn't end with a blind date or a charity gala. Daniel's admiration for Emma's determination grew into something tangible. He offered her a position at his foundation, a role that aligned perfectly with her passion for education and helping others. Emma hesitated at first, unsure if she could bridge the gap between her modest background and his world. But Daniel's faith in her and her own newfound confidence gave her the courage to say yes. Together, they began a partnership rooted in understanding and shared purpose. The work they embarked on wasn't easy, but it was deeply fulfilling. Emma brought her life experiences to the table, helping Daniel's foundation connect with those who needed it most. Together, they created programs that provided resources and opportunities for individuals who, like Emma, had once struggled to make ends meet. Their combined efforts became a beacon of hope for many, proving that even the smallest steps forward could lead to meaningful change. Emma often thought about how her story had intertwined with Daniel's, each of them shaping the other's path in ways neither could have foreseen. Reflecting on her journey, Emma realized how much had changed from that fateful evening at the cafe. Life's most transformative moments, she learned, often arose from the unexpected. The mix-up at the blind date table had led to an encounter that reshaped her world. The experience taught her to embrace uncertainty, to find meaning in life's twists and turns. And as she shared her story with others, she encouraged them to trust that even life's most confusing moments could lead to something extraordinary. Emma and Daniel's paths were proof of what could happen when people embraced life's possibilities. Their journey encouraged others to approach the unknown with an open heart and an open mind. For Emma, the world was no longer just a series of struggles. It was a canvas of opportunities waiting to be discovered. And for Daniel, his connection with Emma reminded him of the humanity he had once overlooked. Together, they showed that small moments could spark profound change, leaving a legacy of hope and resilience for others to follow. As the screen fades to a soft glow, the narrator's voice breaks the silence, calm yet stirring. Every life is filled with moments that test us, moments that shape who we are and what we become. Emma and Daniel's story reminds us that the unexpected can lead to something extraordinary. But this is just one story. What about yours? The narrator pauses briefly, allowing the words to settle. Take a moment to reflect. Have you ever experienced a twist of fate that changed your path? A challenge that sparked a strength you didn't know you had? Or perhaps a connection that inspired you to see the world differently? The visuals transition to a serene, starry night sky, evoking wonder and introspection. We'd love to hear your story. Share your moments of inspiration in the comments below. Your voice matters. Your experiences can uplift someone who needs hope today. The camera shifts to show warm, smiling faces, symbolizing unity and understanding. Your story, no matter how small it may seem, has the power to touch hearts. By sharing, you're not just reflecting on your journey, you're helping someone else find the strength to face their own challenges. The narrator's voice grows a little softer, inviting trust and connection. So, let your words inspire. Join the conversation and see how your story can create a ripple of encouragement across our growing community. The visuals now highlight moments of kindness. A stranger helping another, a child laughing with joy, a hand reaching out to comfort someone. Stories like this remind us of the strength and beauty in human connection. If Emma and Daniel's journey moved you, we invite you to stay connected with us. The narrator's tone turns hopeful, almost personal. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate the courage, resilience, and love that bind us all. Together, we can continue to shine a light on the extraordinary lives around us. The final scenes show a family gathered around a table, laughter filling the room, and a pair of friends walking hand in hand through a park. And don't keep this story to yourself. Share it with someone who could use a little hope today, a friend, a loved one, or anyone who needs to be reminded that life's challenges can lead to something beautiful. The narrator's voice grows warm and encouraging. Let's spread the light, one story at a time. Together, we can inspire hope, one connection at a time.